This video will be a short demonstration of an ezEML feature, check data tables. Check data tables is similar in concept to another feature's check metadata that may be familiar to you. Check metadata looks at so I just clicked on check metadata in the contents list here. Check metadata shows warnings and errors for items in the metadata that are either missing or invalid or recommended but missing. That check looks only at the metadata, and it does not actually open up data tables. So what check data tables does is, for data tables in particular, it drills down and actually opens the CSV files, the data files, to see if what's in the tables aligns with the description of the data table that's in the metadata. So it's looking at both the metadata and the data table contents in unison. So for example, here I just click check data tables for this data package that I have open. This particular data package only has one data table. That data table is listed. This, if there were more, they would all be listed. This page shows the status of each table in a color-coded with a color-coded badge. The yellow indicates that it has not yet been checked, so it's to indicate caution. We don't know its status yet. In that case, we'll see a link check data table, which we click to actually run the check. The reason we have the check initiated by a user action is that depending on the size of the table, the check can take up to several minutes. So if you have a number of tables, you would like to be able to control whether all those checks get run at the same time, that kind of thing. So in this case, this table has not been checked yet. Let's click check data table. And in this instance, the check was quick. We see the check data table results for this table. It's for a specific table. That table is named at the top here. And then the errors within the table are organized by column. So here we have a column, lake ID number, which is a categorical column that has a number of errors. And if we look at the entries for the errors, they're all in the same format. They have a row number, the description of the error, what we expected to find based on the metadata, and what we actually found. So in this case, it's categorical column. We see, and we're being told that there are a number of elements that are not among the defined category codes for that categorical column. And then what we expected was one of the defined codes, and what we found is these various values. Now we see here that there's a row and then an ellipsis and then another row. What this indicates is that this particular kind of error, categorical element is not a defined code, occurred in a number of consecutive rows 2 through 19. Rather than show them all, we show an ellipsis. So because in this case there would be hundreds, and some other data tables we'll see there would be thousands of errors listed, and you don't really need to see them all to figure out what the problem is. So in this case, the issue is we have a categorical column with a number of codes that are not among the defined codes. There's also another column here that has an error. This is a date time column, and the error is this. Well, first of all, this error, we don't see a row number because the error pertains to the column as a whole. And the error is that the date time format string that's specified in the metadata is not one that the EDI data repository supports. What are the formats that are supported by EDI? Well, there's a link here that provides a list of all of the the formats that we support. These are formats that are consistent with the ISO 8601 standard. So if we go back to check data tables, oh, by the way, let me point out that before what we saw here was check data table, and it was a yellow status. Now we've run it. So, and we discovered that there were errors. So the status is turned to red. And instead of saying check data table, it says show errors, because it's not actually going to have to rerun the check. It's just going to display the errors. And we can note also that the overall status that's indicated by the next to the check data tables link down here is now red, because there is at least one table in the list that has an error. All right, so if we go back and look at the errors again, so it was the lake ID number and date SMP. So let's go look at the data table. Click on the data tables link up here and open that table. Look at the columns. Okay, lake ID number. The issue, remember, was that we had categorical codes that weren't among the defined codes, and the defined codes are just W, C, and E. EML has an option that lets you specify whether you want, for a categorical column, whether you want to allow only the code values that are defined or allow other codes as well. So in this case, evidently what happened is that there's an E, presumably East, code that then a 3-digit suffix was added in the entries in the table. So all those different E ... those entries are not among the defined codes. So let's just say we want to allow other codes besides the ones defined here. And we will save and continue. And well, just real quick, if we go back now to check data tables, the ezEML recognizes that the metadata has changed, so that the check has to be rerun. And if we do that, all those errors about the categorical codes, those are now gone, because we have changed the metadata to say that we don't consider those errors, don't consider them to be errors. Okay, and then we have this other issue with the date SMP column. So let's go look at that. Here it is. All right, and we see that the format string was given in the metadata was MMDDYYYY, which is not consistent with the ISO 8601 standard. It really should be in this format, YYYY-MM-DD. If we change it here, well, why don't I go ahead and do it? I'll change it to that format. Oh, by the way, let me just point out that the help here for the date time format string also has information about what format strings are okay, and has a link to that list that we saw earlier of the supported format strings. But anyway, so we will let's go ahead and save and continue. Come back to the check data tables. It recognizes that we have to rerun the check, which we do, and now we have a different error. Before it said that the format string that was defined in the metadata was not one of the supported formats. We don't have that error anymore because we changed it to a supported format. But now what we see is that all of these rows, what's in the table is no longer, doesn't match the format string that's in the metadata. The metadata now says it should be in YYYY MMDD format, and what's in the table does not match that. So we have two options here. We can change the table to, rewrite the dates in this expected format, which is probably quote unquote the quote unquote right way to do it, because best practice would be to have the date time adhere to one of the standard formats. In this case, we can, the other option is just to change the date time string format string back to what it was, and just accept the fact that we have we're using a format string that's not one of the recommended ones. And for the purposes of this demonstration, that's what I'm going to do. This is an example of the fact that the criteria that are being applied by ezEML are a bit more stringent, less permissive than the criteria that are applied by the EDI data repository when a package is submitted to the repository. So in fact, having this column with a format that's not one of the supported formats, you actually can go ahead and submit it as is to the EDI data repository, and you'll get a warning, but the package will be accepted into the data repository. All right, let's look at another example. Open this. This is a table or a package I've looked at previously, so the table's already been checked, and it has errors. Let's look at the errors. Again, well, here there's something new here. So this is the name of the table, the column. Again, the errors are organized by column, and we have a column here, occurrence status, and we have an error that applies to the column as a whole, so there's no row number. And the error is the metadata column name does not match the column name in the data table itself. So the metadata it says that the column name is this, and see there's an extra T in here. This is misspelled. And what's actually in the table is this. The column type is listed as unknown because since the column name of the column doesn't in the table doesn't match what's in the metadata, we don't actually know. ezEML doesn't know what the intended variable type is for that column. And then there's another column, sample size value, which is a numerical column, which has a number of errors. And again, we see these ranges of errors where a number of rows have been omitted. What was expected was an integer value that says a numerical element is not of the expected type, but what was expected was an integer value. What was found is a floating point number, a real number with a decimal point. So let's go make corrections here. I open up the data table, edit, go to column properties, go down to occurrence status, fix the spelling, and I can fix it in even the optional values here just to make them match. Save and continue. And the other issue was what was it? The sample size value. But it says it's an integer, and it should be a real. Okay. And now I go back to check data tables. It recognizes that we changed the metadata, so we have to rerun the check. And now there's no errors found. And if I go back to the list of data tables, the status is now green, and the overall, since this was the only table, the overall status is also green. If there are any, if you have a list, well, I'll just show you an example of that. If we open up a different package. This is a package that has a number of tables. Some of them are red. They've been checked and they have errors. So the overall status is red, telling you that there are things to go look at here and fix. We have some that are read and they've been run. We have a number that haven't been run yet. So let's take Lake, for example, run check data table. In this case, there were no errors found. So Lake now has green status, but the overall status is still red because there are errors to deal with. And that's I think all we need to demonstrate here. This is basically so the idea is that you can check your data tables to see if the tables and the metadata match up, and you can find the errors that need to be fixed. And you don't have to wait until you try to submit your package to the EDI data repository to discover that you have errors that need to be that should be corrected. So that's the feature. It's brand new. We are as of the time of this recording. So it would be great to hear from people if you have feedback, if you run into problems, and we hope you find it useful. Thank you.